Good morning to everyone, to all the leaders, the innovators, the entrepreneurs here this morning. It's a privilege being in the same room as you. As introduced, my name is Michael, and I'm going to be chatting about Rehive this morning. I initially had seven slides prepared, and a guy I'm staying at, a friend of mine this week, said at their company they have to be able to do a 30-second elevator ride pitch. So when I heard that, I kind of went and deleted everything. Now I have 2 slides to entertain you with, and the rest is in my little brown book, so excuse me for carrying this around. Okay, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to extend my 7 minutes just a little bit, because it probably officially starts when the viewing's up. So I think the reason we're all sitting here this morning is because of the advent of blockchain technology. And, okay, so I've gained 15 seconds. And since the arrival of blockchain technology, we've seen some seriously interesting use cases and ideas come to the fore. And yet, it still seems that there exists a bit of a chasm, or let me call it a bad conversion rate, between all these ideas that are coming up and ideas that are actually converted into implemented products or FinTech applications. And it seems that the cost of innovation is actually quite expensive. And I read an article when I was at the airport just before flying here. I can't remember who wrote it, but they said that innovation isn't expensive. Innovating incorrectly is expensive. And I kind of like that, because that's exactly what we're all about. We want to make innovation as affordable as possible. And I think the contributing factors to this gap that we see between having an idea and knowing there's a seriously powerful technology that's available to us are things like upfront development cost, time. Generally, with these FinTech applications, you generally need quite a large user adoption, because the margins are quite small in most cases to start making money. A skill shortage, especially with resources like blockchain developers that are competent in several blockchains. And so all these things contribute to us really not getting to the point where we can convert smart ideas that leverage blockchain technology and actually, on top of that, solve real-world problems. As we see, a lot of problems are still solved actually using centralized solutions and not decentralized solutions. So maybe allow me to walk through a little example that I'm going to make up just to bring this a little bit more, or give what I'm talking about hands and feet. I'm just going to make up some characters here. Let's say there's a lady called Liesel who's based in Europe, and she's got a couple of friends that are, let's say, based in South Africa. Heinrich and Denai, who are clients of, let me not name service providers. It is irrelevant. And she wants to send them some data or some airtime. And she's not a client of these service providers. And to make matters worse, she's just had a handbag stolen, so she doesn't have a credit card with her. But the real point is that Liesel really wants to spend her Bitcoin, because it's also just gone up by like 20% in the last few days. So she's really eager to start spending this stuff. So this guy called Stuart comes along, and he sees this opportunity. And so he decides to start a business. He decides to start a blockchain-based airtime remittance business, which sounds really cool. But the reality is that Stuart is faced with several sort of problems to closing this gap, this chasm, from getting his idea into something that's actually practically produced. And he's got several options. He can either build this entire thing from scratch, which is going to be a serious steep learning curve, or he can acquire another FinTech and get some IP and some resources, or he can pay for an enterprise solution, which is going to be really expensive. And at the same time, he's not guaranteed that it's going to be built flexibly enough or easily extendable enough for when Liesel comes around next year and says she actually wants to pay with Ethereum or Zcash or something. So consider a fourth option for Stuart. Consider the option where he has 60 to 80% of the requirements for his decentralized FinTech application accessible to him through one or more application programming interfaces. And so Stuart can really spend the last 20% using his skill and his track record and his history and whatever it is that makes him unique to build that part of his application that's really special and differentiates him from all the other decentralized applications. and not spend his time going up this really frustrating curve of having to figure everything out for the first time, especially in an environment where things are rapidly changing the whole time, with new protocols coming out and even new blockchains being introduced. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what Rehive is. And if we can call the blockchain the first layer, Rehive is the second layer. I know that sounds really primitive. My colleagues in San Francisco, they had a conference in Silicon Valley yesterday, said, I need to introduce this. It's a new hype word, so excuse it for now. But I think the requirement is, if blockchain technology is the first layer, often we see the client interface, the endpoint, as the third layer. There is a massive need for a big, chunky second layer that can handle all the business logic for not having to build all that from scratch, including the integrations. And we can get into the detail of what that layer consists of. And Rehive has built this second layer, which we call Rehive Platform, to do just that, to close the gap on having this host of technology available to us and knowing what we need as an end state. And we call this Rehive Platform. Together with Rehive Platform, we have Rehive Services, which are a bunch of decoupled micro FinTech services that sit on top of the platform. Because it's not good enough for Liesl just to know that she's bought airtime and sent it. She wants to get a notification saying your transaction has been successfully processed. And more than that, she actually wants to send a custom message to whoever she sent the airtime to, saying, hey, call me when you get this because I've just sent you some airtime. So as an example, Rehive has built a decoupled notification service that works in collaboration with our Bitcoin service to execute logic like this. So where's Rehive today? 2.5 years later, we have over 100 projects that have been built or are still being built on Rehive Platform. We don't always know who these people are. They range from enterprises to individuals. There's a lot of sort of people in Nigeria that have built quite a lot of interesting use cases on Rehive, maybe because we make it free to startups. We have, of these 100+ projects, we've got 3 live products applications that are servicing today just over 10,000 customers. And I checked last night with our dev team. To date, Rehive has processed just under 1 million transactions on our ledger system. The interesting thing is that Rehive obviously doesn't just cater, while this is a blockchain forum, and I appreciate that. Slide, for instance, just launched. They're the new Venmo for South Africa. They launched about a week and a half ago. But Refill, they are in fact the example that we just walked through now, a blockchain-based airtime remittance company. Both those products are completely powered and built on top of and hosted by Rehive. The final one is Loon. That is a cryptographic wallet for friends to send and receive lumens, which is the currency for the Stellar network. As you can see, this doesn't use any of Rehive's blockchain services. Within blockchain, there are 3 services, and those are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Stellar that are currently live and running today. And Loon was our own sort of pilot project, which we did. Now we're getting too many users than what we'd like because we're not a product house. And that's built on the Stellar network. So that takes me to the end of my 7 minutes. I'm going to put the ball in, I want to say your court, but I don't want to count hands and be biased. I'll put into the judge's court. Either you can bombard me with questions, because I think there's 10 minutes for that, or I can take you through I'll keep it to 120-second demo of actually buying some airtime on Bitrefill and sending it to someone here, so that you guys get a bit of a more practical answer on what all this business logic is that Rehive is generating and providing to Bitrefill, who's pretty much built everything on Rehive. The floor's open to you. Demo. Okay, cool. I would have said the same. So while I'm setting this up, Rehive's anatomy is a little bit more complex than what I've made it sound, in the sense that Rehive offers an admin dashboard, which is a completely integrated dashboard built in Angular that allows admin users to run their entire business off and have a view of the whole transaction ledger, view transaction history, and pretty much run whatever's happening in the background. That's open sourced. On the other hand, Rehive also offers a client-facing wallet that's also open sourced, and that's integrated with our client API. Sorry, I'm just going to duck down. Is it up? Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to say a lot of things now. Just bear with me and put yourself in Stuart's shoes, who would have had to build this himself. Remember we spoke about the 20% that you still got to do with your developers, or whether you outsource that portion or whatever it is. Being a airtime remittance company, the first thing you want to do is obviously verify your number. So this is like a little decoupled microservice that Bitrefill would have had to do themselves. Rehive is doing all the integrations in the back end and finding live Bitcoin to, in this case, it's picked up my location, so it knows I'm in South Africa. So it's already quoting me in Rand. I'm just going to put in $25. Okay, it's already picked up my email, probably because of previously. And I go over to the Bitcoin payment options. So what's happening on the Rehive transaction processing system, or Rehive's internal ledger? Remember, Rehive is the business logic. We don't the custodian of funds. Rehive is built on top of a store of value. In this case, the store of value is the blockchain, and the store of funds are held by, for instance, Bitrefill's one or more of their Bitcoin accounts to receive payments from. Rehive, though, is generating the order address, the transaction address, the user address, and keeping record of that in our ledger so that you can use that information as an audit trail or to do analytics on or build some really interesting prediction models. But Rehive has also built these integrations, which they required, to allow a user to pay with Coinbase or local Bitcoins or Zappa or altcoins. But if you just want to make a manual payment, I don't know why our QR code isn't coming up. Rehive is generating a QR code. And in the admin dashboard that Rehive has created, Bitrefill is choosing a 15-minute quote period for us to do the conversion. They will also decide on Rehive's dashboard, do they want to peg the price of Bitcoin to Rand using one exchange and make that clear to the users, or do they want to take a mean value as an estimate from several exchanges and use that as the exchange rate? So all that sort of logic is being generated and provided through our API. Using our Bitcoin service, you can see here that Rehive is creating a Bitcoin address for this user that's sitting in our ledger system. And when I now go and, well, to save time, I'm not going to actually do this. I would scan that QR code and send the Bitcoin. And what would happen in the background is Rehive will be scraping the blockchain, recognize that the payment has been received after a set of minutes.
I have to interrupt you there.
Okay.
Conor McGregor didn't hit anyone after the bell.
He did argue, though, that he still had some fight left in him.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Brink from Rehive.
Thank you.
Okay, because we do have a bit of time, just a minute or two left, we are going to open it to the judges for some questions. They have score sheets with them, and I think, Heinrich, you've got the
yeah, Michael, Heinrich here. Very cool kind of like platform. I think a cool enabler using state-of-the-art microservices stack and all that stuff. How are you making money with that? That would be of interest for me at this stage.
Yes, that's a good question. I'd say there are two vehicles for us. Rehive really becomes successful when someone that is building something and starts scaling becomes successful. So you could have guessed our fees on transactions. If I can call that's our variable sort of fee structure. Our goal is to never cost you more than 10% of the revenue you're making off your FinTech application. Obviously, the way that we slap fees onto transactions is different. If you have a low volume, high value, we would want to be not that aggressive in charging a percentage transaction fee. If you're going high volume, low value, we may want to peg a fixed rate for active users and a once-off fee for transactions. So based on what your business model is and making sure that we're working effectively and that it's a win-win situation, we'll fix a transaction fee. On the other hand, it's access to Rehive's license for you to build on top of Rehive. The last option, and this is Rehive's sort of vision and mission for 2018, and this is where we're going, is building a completely open-sourced, open marketplace for all participants and leveraging regulation like PSD2 in Europe, where all participants can build on Rehive and even build your own service, host it on the platform, make it available for someone who wants that specific service, and it becomes something like an API marketplace. But for now, it's the license fee and then the fees on the transactions.
Okay, one more question, Dana.
Oh, am I the last question? Thank you very much for your presentation. So I actually have 2 questions, and I'm going to sneak them in. Thank you very much. So the first actually is, you've had a lot of applications that are being built on your platform from Nigeria. I just wanted to ask, do you know what kind of projects those are? And
Yes.
do you generally keep track of the projects that you have growing on your platform? Are they terrible projects that are maybe detrimental to people?
Yes.
Or and so forth? So where do
Okay.
you hold your responsibility around that? The second question is, how many projects have you actually got that have significant traction on your platform?
Yes.
And what's the dropout rate in terms of projects on your platform that don't go through to completion?
Okay. Thanks, Denai.
Yeah,
Okay, I got that. We're getting a lot of people building ICOs on Rehive because Rehive is great for building and launching an ICO. Okay, so with those, we pretty, don't want to use the word rude, maybe cold. And we've just like developed a new process for really vetting people's white papers before we decide to be your official ICO tech partner. But I think you're more talking about just general projects. A lot of the people in Nigeria are building escrow applications on Rehive, where Rehive will act as you'll build the logic on Rehive to decide when funds are held and when released based on some business logic that gets executed. So escrow seems to be just going off the charts, particularly in Nigeria. And then just a lot of people that are building simple Bitcoin wallets still, or different sort of cryptographic wallets. We are, I want to say, unofficially partners with a guy from the Stellar blockchain, and they obviously have a presence in Nigeria. So because we have a live Stellar service, guys can really build any sort of decentralized app that runs off the Stellar blockchain. So cryptocurrency wallets, escrow applications from Nigeria are pretty big. Concerning people that build things and projects that drop off, that question is better answered by our development team. So if we see that you have something that you want to build, then you can request to get invited to our Slack channel. And so we would kind of support as much as we can for a non-paying client. But we're pretty big on hosting hackathons as frequently as possible to match entrepreneurs with developers and get them building on Rehive really quickly. But we do not measure what the drop-off rate is. The honest answer is you can just literally go on our Medium blog. There's a whole demo. You can register a company on Rehive and just start building. We are too busy to try and keep track of what you're doing unless we feel that this is something you're far enough down the line, you've actually put some skin in the game, you want to launch, you want to scale, and possibly you want to go onto a mid-tier package of $2,500 a month just to get something like 16 hours support a week or something like that. Then we'd obviously have a tighter lens on that. Yeah.
Good. Happy with that?
That answered the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Michael Brink, Rehive.